So today we are here to talk about career change over 40.
One of my favorite topics.
I know, right? Well, I mean, I made a career change at 39 and 10 months. So it is something that is near and dear to my heart.
Likewise, I was over 40.
Yeah, when you changed into being a coach.
I did. Yes.
So tell me a little bit of that story.
So, gosh, long story short, I was a practicing corporate lawyer for an AmLaw 100 firm for many years. But I was always a people person, a strong empath. And my career really led me to coaching with some twists and turns. But in my late 30s, I felt a strong calling. That's how I describe it, that I wasn't really living my purpose in my traditional practice of law. And I loved serving people. And so that began my journey which led me to where I am today, because I was working with a lot of people who were struggling with the same things that I was at that time, which was burnout and trying to manage it all, the work-life blend and balance. And I realized there was a problem that needed to be solved. And that was really the catalyst for me making this pivot. But it took me about a decade to get here. So it's not always a straight line. So that's kind of the quick story.
But
I haven't looked back.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that, because it took me, I have to look back. And in retrospect, I was starting my turn about 2 years before I actually left the practice of law. So, and I look back on this, what my husband called bizarre behavior at the time, but now I see it for what it was, which was really identity change behavior. Mm-hmm. And I was like desperate to sell our house. I wanted to move into a 2-bedroom townhouse. Mm-hmm. And my husband was like, what are we doing? Like, why are we going to move? Oh, and then I was like, I just want to buy the townhouse. We don't have to move into it, but there was a townhouse for sale behind our current house. And I was like, I just want to buy it. I just want to have it. Yeah. What are you doing? And then I tried to buy a smaller house that we could pay for with the proceeds from this house and not have a mortgage. Mm-hmm. And my husband, and I was like, I feel so good about this decision. My husband was like, I don't know what's happening. Why do you keep on trying to sell our house? And then we became a foster family. Wow. The following year in 2018, after not selling our house, and my husband convinced me to stay here, and welcomed the twins in and had them for 9 months. And I really think that was the disruption that I needed to my identity as an attorney. It was like the earthquake that allowed me to kind of disconnect.
Yes.
And to say exactly what you're saying, which is like, wow, this doesn't suit me anymore. And I've been holding on so tight because it feels so scary to let it go. But but I'm actually, this is no longer satisfying to me the way it was for the majority of my career. And I need to find something else that feels meaningful, that feels purposeful, where I can still collaborate with brilliant people, which is what I loved about practicing law, where I can still solve hard problems. Mm-hmm. I loved about practicing law, and where I can still serve that strategic advisor or trusted advisor role that I loved about being an attorney. Those were like the 3 things I wanted to carry forward.
Right.
And coaching really allowed me to do that. But like you were saying, I won't even say it wasn't a straight line. It was like I swirled for 2 years trying all these small changes. Like, well, maybe if I change this, and maybe if I change that, and maybe if only I did this, then I'd be satisfied in my career again.
Right.
And then at the end of it, it was like, oh, wait, none of those small changes or mini transitions worked. Mm-hmm. And it was like an oh shit moment of like, I've got to make a major transition. And that feels really scary.
Yeah. And, you said something interesting about that. You started your transition about 2 years before it really happened. And I see that a lot with our clients is they're coming to us with either a story similar to yours or mine. My wake-up call was burnout and chronic health issues. And you had the disruptor of the foster children. Mm-hmm. And there is something that's going on in their lives. And so they come to us and they're like, there's a nagging feeling that something is wrong. I don't exactly know what it is because I'm so busy and I don't have time to really stop and think about it, but I know this is not right. And that's usually what I see. I don't know what you see with some of our clients, but that's usually what I see is like the first step of like, I need to evaluate this and I need some help guiding me through that.
Yeah. I think with a lot of my clients, what I see is busy and bored. So they are both busy and they are bored by something that had been very challenging to them and that they really loved previously, but they are not getting the same satisfaction out of it that they've gotten previously. So they're just as busy, or if not more busy than they were in the past, because they're trying not to be bored. And typically they are, as I said, they're brilliant people. So they have these very active and engaged and generative minds, and they're trying to, they are looking for kind of what's going to captivate them.
And, you know, the fact that they are brilliant, driven people, ambitious for sure, that can be part of what can keep people stuck when they're thinking about a career change after 40, at least that I see with my clients, because it's like the belief, which is often a false belief, that there isn't something out there that's going to be as intellectually challenging as and as stimulating and as lucrative as what they are doing. And so that really can keep people stuck.
I think also that in a culture as success obsessed as ours, that leaving a very high powered job can feel like failure.
Absolutely.
You can tell yourself a story of I couldn't hack it. I'm leaving because I couldn't hack it, or I still have something to prove. Like I need to prove that I can succeed in this male dominated industry, in this high pressure cooker of success environment. I need to make that final brass ring, whether that's VP, corporate executive, law firm equity partner, to prove that I'm not leaving because of anything internally or intrinsically wrong with me. It is my choice.
That's right.
And that's really about other people's expectations. That's really about the stories other people are telling about your path, than it is about them and what's best for them.
Yeah. And that ties into this identity piece, right? Especially as lawyers and as corporate executives and as women who've had successful careers, it's hard to determine or to discern what our identity, what our success is going to look like apart from the current paradigm. In fact, I asked a client once, what is your definition of success? And it was really difficult for her to answer it apart from those external constraints that had been wrapped around her.
Yeah. I also think that once you've touched all those brass rings, like you graduated from college, high school, probably high school, top of your class. Then you graduated from college, top of your class, and you got the coveted internship. And then you got into the most coveted law school or business school. And then you graduated from that top of your class and you got the job that everyone wanted, right? And then you're in the job and you're successful in the job and you're hitting the billable hours and you're doing the thing. And maybe you have the husband, maybe you want the husband, maybe you don't, maybe you have the kids, maybe you want the kids, maybe you don't, but you have touched all of the external rings of success that people, the shoulds.
Yeah.
And you're still not satisfied. It's like the Hamilton, I will never be satisfied.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, well, what now? Like I did all the things. I hit all the marks. I did all the things that people tell me that I should do. And I still don't feel successful. I still don't feel like I have achieved what I wanted to achieve. And I'm chasing that feeling.
Yes.
Of being a success. And it's almost like success addicts, right? Like, how am I going to get that dopamine hit of success when now I'm wearing all the rings?
Yes.
Like now what? And
you know what? The kind of to build on that, the rings have been set forth for you. The blueprint is out there. And so when we're thinking about making a career change, tuning into that dissatisfaction, I've already got all the rings, somebody's laid out the blueprint for me. What do I do now when we're living in ambiguity, or when we get to design the blueprint? That can really feel pretty scary, like we're on a precipice of like, I just don't know where to go.
Well, there are no more rings. Like, you've got to decide what the rings are now. Like,
yes, and that's hard.
Yeah, you've got to define success for yourself and then go out and achieve it. And there is no more, you do this, you get this degree, you get this grade, you get this job. Now it's all on you when you're over 40. Like, no one is telling you. And in fact, all of the societal cues are to status quo.
Exactly. That's
for your husband, for your parents. It's very scary.
For your colleagues.
For your colleagues, if you're willing to even tell them.
Right.
It's very scary if you're in a stable, lucrative, high-powered job and you say, I don't know that this is for me.
Yes.
Everyone's going to tell you to stay.
That's right.
It's scary for your husband to think about you leaving that big high-powered job and that big paycheck. Mm-hmm. It's scary for your parents, especially as they get older, to think about you venturing once again into kind of the early 20s uncertainty territory.
Yeah.
So all the external markers are actually going to tell you, instead of like your whole life, they've been like, go for it, go for it, go for it. Now you're doing career change over 40. And everyone's like, don't do it.
Right. Right. What do you think when you're working with clients, Sarah-Nell, are some of the kind of 2 or 3 key things that get them over that hurdle of being stuck, of helping them start to push down the path of getting closer to their dreams? What do you think I'm curious to hear from your clients who've had success in doing this, what those things look like?
So one I'd say is a don't do, which is don't tell your parents if their opinion is very important to you. Mm-hmm. Specifically them. You might not be able to hide it from your spouse because you live in the same house, but don't tell your parents your half-baked ideas. Like, right. Have a different sounding board, whether that's a coach, whether that's a close friend, but someone who's not invested in your current identity.
Yes.
Have a sounding board of them, not your colleagues, right? They're invested in your current identity. Have someone that you can talk to that is not your parents, that you can create kind of a more fully cooked idea with, that then you can take to your closest loved ones. Because a lot of times people get very discouraged and will say to me, like, my husband's not supportive. I can't make this change, or my parents think I'm crazy and I'm starting to doubt myself. And those early confidence hits are almost like waves that are too big to get over.
That's right.
And so really, like, holding it a little close and treating it a little tenderly at the beginning, when you're trying to figure out what it is that might come next, when you don't even know, when you only know what you're leaving and you don't know what you're heading towards.
Yes. I'd
say, like, confide in people that do not have a vested interest in your current identity. And so sometimes people call these third ring contacts. Called the power of weak ties, I want to say it's called, that talks about how kind of our third ring contacts, or our weakest ties in our network, are the people that are most open to innovative thinking with us and most encouraging of these kind of wild hair dreams.
Yeah.
And so I would say that that's one. Another thing that I would say is experiment. Like, you need to find a way to live into this new identity. And so whatever that is, like, whatever that looks like for you, because you might not like it. Like, you might think you want to do something because it's actually running away energy. It's escapism energy. It's energy of like, I just can't take it here anymore.
Right.
And as you experiment with that escapism energy, you might be like, you know what? I actually don't want to live in a third world country teaching scuba diving. It's hard to go to the grocery store, right? I did it for 2 weeks, staying in an Airbnb or a month, or, whatever you can get. And it really was not as idyllic as it sounded in my mind. The daily structures of life were very hard. My Wi-Fi constantly went out, whatever that is.
I think that is really important, the experimentation, so that you can
experimenting before you leave your current
exactly
before you leave the stability and security. I mean, I say to clients all the time, you've been at this company 10 to 20 years. If you tried your hardest, it would take you 6 months to get fired.
Exactly.
Like if you put all your energy into getting fired, it would take you 6 months.
That's right.
So like
we can slow down.
Yeah, you can slow down and you have space to, and also for most of our clients, I know you know this, Julie, but like their C effort is most people's A effort.
Exactly. That's right.
So if they shifted gears into a lower gear, they would still be outperforming the vast majority of their peers.
Yeah. I tell my clients that too, that what's the worst that can happen if you pull back and start to explore this? You're not going, chances are you're not going to get fired. But it's hard to come out of that overachieving mindset when you're
that fear-based mindset, right?
Yeah.
That you've been in your whole life, that fear of failure.
Right.
And then the third thing I would say is know thyself. So like, how do you get the self-awareness to know who you are and what you want and how you thrive, and developing a full, rich, multidimensional life outside of work before you make that jump, so that your identity is not 100% work, so that you are Sarah-Nell, the mom, the tennis player, the writer, the foster parent, the swim team person, the triathlete. Like, how do you have or start cultivating a rich life outside of the office so that that piece of your identity loses a little bit of its power?
Yeah, I think that's an important point to make, because for our ambitious, driven, overachieving clients, we're often focused, and I was too, on the exterior, on the outer game. But this interior piece, or this inner game that you're talking about, this development of self-awareness and the multi-dimensional aspects of ourselves, or holistic view of ourselves, that's really the first piece that needs to be done before we take the external. And a lot of clients are not used to thinking that way. So that's a little bit of a mindset shift that I see with my clients at the beginning of a coaching engagement.
Absolutely. And I think it's scary.
It is very scary because it's different.
And I think that admitting what you want and where things are not hitting the mark for you, when you have been so focused on being an achiever, is a really hard conversation to have with yourself.
It's also very brave. And you know what's coming up for me now is this conversation. So I was going through this 10, 15 years ago. This conversation was not happening. Like, I get emotional when I think about how far we've come as a society, and of course, how far we need to go. But this conversation right here wasn't really happening in the public square, And so it gives us a platform to really be doing exactly what we want now more than ever in our culture, I think.
I also think that if people choose to take it, that COVID has been a disruptor, just the same as the twins were for me.
Exactly.
And I think we're at a little bit of a turning point. My husband said it yesterday. He said people are forgetting.
Yes, because I picked up on that too.
Because we were talking about how when COVID first started, there were these trees that have some sort of random but edible fruit on them near our kids' school. And we were like, remember when picking these fruit, I don't even know what I've even forgotten what they are, but remember when picking these fruit off these trees, they might be mulberries, but remember when picking these fruit off these trees was like the thing in 2020, and people were out here like all day, every day, like with ladders, like scouring these trees for fruit. People were making jam and people were making wine, and like everyone, like this was a thing. And like the fruit is out on the trees right now and it's falling to the ground and it's getting stepped on. And I said to my husband, and my husband said to me, like, people are forgetting. And it does feel like the disruption has happened.
Yes.
And that some people are going back to being, I'll use the word blind, but maybe the better word is unaware of what they are giving up again.
Yeah, I'm sensing that as well. And yet I do see and have seen that it very much has been a disruptor. It's given people an opportunity to say, wait a minute, life really is short. And do I want to continue living in this way? And, it's never too late. I have a client who's in her 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just.
My coach wrote 3 books after 70.
Amazing.
Yeah. And was coaching me at 8, I think she was 81.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And
I want to be her.
And she changed my life. And what an amazing legacy. Like, think about all the lives that she touched.
That's right.
And she was a nurse. And then at 40, she went back to school to become a psychotherapist. And then at 70, she went back and got her coaching certification.
Incredible.
What a 3rd chapter. Right?
Love it. Yeah.
It's never too late. And the story that we tell ourselves of it is too late is just that. It's a story.
Yeah, absolutely. It is not the truth. It is not the reality.
No.
Yeah.
So what do you see that is most impactful for your clients if they are able to get into the mindset of knowing themselves? Mm-hmm. What small actions can they take that make this identity shift into a new career either more possible or easier?
Yeah, it's, it comes back to this idea that where I've seen it really work well for my clients is when they've set values-based goals. So those things that are really their North Star and are really important to them. So that's kind of the self-awareness piece. But when that is their anchor and tied to that is their motivating factor. So those two things, values and a motivating factor, that becomes their anchor that they can then come back to when they're having this identity crisis. Because when we have been caught up for decades in a career where it's like, I'm a lawyer and this is what I do, for example, it is hard to make that shift, particularly in social settings. But when we have the anchor of values and a motivating factor, I find that with my clients, they come back to that as a grounding place for why they're doing this. And then kind of tuning into who they really are apart from work, kind of back to your multidimensional word you used, that work is just one aspect of who they are. So that's been a big catalyst for us in the work that I do with my clients.
Yeah. And I was thinking back, to my transition, and I recently went to an event, so I was part of this leadership group at our local Fern Bank, for those of you in Atlanta, our local natural history museum. And I just went back to my first event post-COVID. So in some ways, like, I left my job in March of 2019. People did not really know me as a coach before COVID started. I was really just launching my business, right? And then COVID started, and now I haven't seen people for 2 years that were part of these networks that I was in as an attorney. And so I went to my first event post-COVID weeks ago, and Jim, who is the leader of this group, was like, Sarah-Nell, I gotta tell you, I am so happy this little gamble paid off for you, because we were all worried when you left your job as a partner at Baker Donaldson. And I said, woo-wee, does she know what she's doing? And it just gave voice. I mean, I could tell that he was somewhat uncomfortable with how to introduce me.
Yes.
And he asked me if I was like a cheerleading coach when I told him I was becoming a coach. But like, I could tell that he was uncomfortable with introducing me after I had left my practice of law and I had started my own business. But it gave voice to what this person, who was a third ring contact, I mean, he isn't someone who knows me very well, what he was thinking about my career change as I was going through it. And so you can imagine that if people are hearing those voices, he had the good sense to keep it to himself. But if people are hearing those voices as they're sharing these ideas, prior to making a transition, that it would almost just tamp it down, that it would take that energy down, and they would be like, this is a terrible idea. I'm not going to do this. Even the man who does donor relations at the Natural History Museum is telling me this is a terrible idea.
Right. Yeah. And to that point, so it's kind of the external or the outer game we play, the tactical things that I do with my clients is starting to test this out. How do we beta test this with people who support us and are going to lift us up? What are some of the things we can rehearse saying? Like, we actually do that too. What is some language that you can use so that you can feel confident and grounded in what you're saying? And who can you start messaging that to, who you know is going to give you that positive feedback? So it's those things too
that you can just practice with. I mean, I remember when I first started toying with the idea of becoming a coach, and I've told a lot of my clients this, I would practice at the dog park telling people that I was a coach, and my mouth would it was like garbly-gook. Like, I couldn't even get the words out. And then I'd immediately revert back to, I used to be a partner at a big law firm. I could not let it go.
Yeah.
But I would practice with the checkout lady. My husband would be like, she did not ask you what you do. And I'd be like, I know, but I'm going to tell her anyway, because I'm practicing saying this thing that feels so foreign in my mouth.
Right. And that is courage, right? We're taking a step out in courage, and that courage builds confidence.
Right.
And it's these baby steps that are important to start testing, so that we can be courageous as we're stepping out, as we're going to a professional event, and we need to speak.
So that you don't have mush mouth at the professional event, that you've done that at the grocery store with the clerk.
Right.
The other thing that, and I loved this, and I've carried this with me, Glennon Doyle said, if you want to test being your true self, don't start with your family, start with the male person. Because that's right. The hardest place to be your true, authentic self is with your family, who has known you for so long and has so many of their own stories about your identity that really even have nothing to do with you.
That's right.
That it's really hard to start being your true self in front of your family of origin, that it is much easier in front of strangers.
And then I always like to ask the risk-benefit questions, which a lot of our clients love, which is, what do you have to lose if you don't make this change? What do you have to gain if you do? And what do you have to lose if you do, right? That's an interesting question, right? What do you have to lose if you do make this change? So those are some really evocative questions that we start to tease out to get to deeper sense of identity.
And also pushing into that dissatisfaction, right? What is the risk of staying the same?
Yeah.
You are yearning for something. Your body is giving you intelligence that this is not right.
Yeah.
And so if you don't listen to that intelligence that's bubbling up inside of you, what's the risk of that? What is that going to feel like to walk through your days, continuing to get ever stronger messages that this is not the path for you?
Yeah, not only the sort of physical risk, which can pop up for people in terms of minor health issues or even more major health issues, also kind of the spiritual or soulful risk, which is something I was feeling. And then the emotional toll that it can take on folks if you let it simmer.
Yeah. And so what is it that you wish for your career change clients? If you could wish on a star for them, right? And sprinkle a little pixie dust, what is it that you wish for them?
What comes to mind is that I wish that they could really see themselves in the future, in the life that they've created. Because when I think about my life now, where sometimes I'm working from home by the lake, PJs on the bottom, or doggy by the side, and the balance that is truly in my life, I want them to have that, whatever that is for them, and to feel that joy that absolutely can exist, and that it is truly possible. And we have worked with so many people where we've seen it's not just a one-off. It's not just you and I got lucky. We've worked with hundreds of clients who've seen this. And so I want for them to have that like gut belief that this is the life that they can have, and really, really believe that and experience that joy.
Yeah. And that is the Wayfinders value of possibility, right?
Yeah.
Of believing that it is possible for you, not just that it is possible in a general sense, but that this future that you yearn for, that you can create it and that you can make it happen. And what I wish, if I could sprinkle a little pixie dust, is that my clients could see themselves the way I see them. That they could see them as the raging, successful, capable, competent, confident, badass women that I see. And because if they could, they would know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they could do anything. Right? Because if they could see them as I saw them, they would not have any doubt.
That's right.
In their abilities and in their ability to make it happen through sheer force of will. Right. And not everyone has that. I'm not saying that applies to everyone, but that has applied to every woman that I have worked with. And I think that it applies to the type of people that are attracted to working with Wayfinders and that are willing to invest in their success in that way. And so that really, because I think that so many of my clients have touched the rings of success and still don't feel like they have made it, still don't feel like they have achieved in some high level, right? They're still waiting to arrive. And that's, again, I think that Hamilton, like, you will never be satisfied syndrome. Like, when will and I say this to clients a lot, like, when is it enough? Like, and my husband said that to me when I was really focused on the financial security piece. My husband was like, look at our bank account, Sarah-Nell. You have worked so hard squirreling away every penny to give us the security to be able to make this choice, right? And if this amount of money isn't enough, like, tell me when it will be enough. And that was really hard to hear, because I don't think of myself as a risk adverse or feel fearful person. I don't think people would describe me that way either. But there was something, right, where it never felt like there was
the right time, or
not the right time.
Another 5 years.
I just need to do this one more little thing. If I could only be equity partner for 1 year and make that payout and get that draw, then I'd feel comfortable.
Right. And then the years tick by, right?
Yeah. And they do. They tick by so fast. And the other piece that I will say is that, like, you will never regret it. Even if it doesn't work out, even if this is not the perfect landing place that ends up being the forever dream, right? You'll never regret having headed in this other direction. And none of my clients who have made drastic career changes, even when it hasn't worked out, have regretted making that move. It might have led to other moves, and they might not be where they thought they were going to be when this happened. But no one says, man, I wish I'd stayed where I was, feeling miserable and unfulfilled.
100%. I've seen that as well. Not one person has regretted it, but there is regret I've seen for not making a change sooner. And so it's really just making the decision to take the next step. It doesn't have to be a big, huge transition, but to take the next step.
And to do something. Because, I love that quote that introspection without action is daydreaming. And so you have to act your way into an identity change. You cannot think your way through it. And so many of our clients live in their heads. They're like disconnected from their bodies.
That's right.
And
That's
so
right.
you've got to act into it. You've got to actually take action. You cannot just think your way through this.
Yeah. Another piece of this that we don't talk about a lot, but I talk about with my clients is intuition. That comes back to not only acting, but listening. We are so much in our heads, our clients especially, that as you called it, bodily intelligence telling us there is something else. And when we start to tune into that and take inspired action, however small, from that standpoint is where I see real shifts occur.
Yeah. And I will say this to all of you out there. I have seen people travel incredible distances in 6 months.
Absolutely.
If I hadn't seen them with my own eyes, I would not believe that that kind of transformation was possible. And so if you are thinking about doing something, start now. Like, you cannot believe where you might be 6 months from now. So I hope this has been helpful to everyone out there in Facebook land listening. If you have questions, drop them in the comments. Julie and I will be looking at them and we'll be interacting with you guys throughout the evening. And if you want to reach out to us to book a discovery session with either me or Julie, please do. We're at wayfinders-atl.com. And if you hit the contact button up in the upper right corner, it will take you to a contact page. You can fill that out, or you can then hit the discovery questionnaire if you want some more guidance on the type of information we're looking for. And you can submit a discovery questionnaire and we will be in touch with information on coaching. It was a pleasure spending time with you, Julie.
Love this topic. Thank you, Sarah-Nell.